Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Truth. And I overall enjoyed this episode. There's a lot of good things going on with it, but it did showcase that even though I have liked the pacing of the episodes, we needed some more time basically with the Flag Smashers and Carly, and definitely with Zemo. Now, I understand that this was mainly about Cap's legacy and that Walker's pretty much, from this endpoint, been, built up as the bad guy, pretty much. He is the, we've seen him try to take on the mantle of Captain America and what that has kind of done to him, and he's pretty much been shifted as the main central antagonist for what's going on. Granted, Carly and her Flag Smashers are doing shit in the background that are pretty much helping to facilitate that kind of antagonistic relationship between Sam, Bucky, and Walker. We needed more episodes and time to flesh them out. Carly, in this episode, even admits that they're criminals at this point, and just goes kind of like mustache villain twirly kind of shit. You know what I mean? Put your damsel in distress on the train tracks kind of shit, almost. And I'm just like, that needed to be kind of fixed. So, even though there's a lot of stuff that I liked with respect to certain characters, there's a lot of stuff that's like, what the fuck's going on? And that Zemo's kind of done, and Sharon's stuff in the background, well, nice kind of teases needed to have been delved in more. She deserves that, especially since this is the first time we've seen her since, the Civil War and all the shit that's been going on. And she's just mainly been in the background doing weird fucking shit that we needed more context for. So with that kind of out of the way, let's kind of discuss everything that has been going on here. You know how in the previous episode where Walker fucking murdered a man? And I'm like, Bucky and Sam should have went after his ass almost immediately. They pretty much rectify that, where Walker is, of course, freaked out, ran to an abandoned place, and was freaking out. It's like, I should have listened to you. Talking to himself about what's been going on, because he's in a kind of fugue state kind of thing going on, even though he starts to kind of come down a little bit. He's freaking out even more than when he was going after the dude, and interestingly enough. But the thing is, he was going after the dude because he was laser honed in, and my friend was killed, so I'm gonna go kill this dude. It's like that dude, he's essentially bulled in a china shop kind of thing, where the bull's like, I'm in a china shop, and I'm breaking shit, and I'm doing my do. And then you're like, you don't want to do that, man. You don't want to do that. Nope. And he fucking did it, and he's freaking out about it. And the thing is, he could have had the ability to explain it better. We even have Sam and Bucky kind of listen, you can explain this. But he doesn't go that route. He only doubles down on certain things and goes fucking nutso kind of even later on. But he's we see the aftermath and them exploring that as he's going through his relationship with Lamar and trying to get a handle on himself. Sitting down, and he's like, alright, let's get to work. And it's just really creepy. He does an Wyatt Russell does an effective job of communicating that in his performance. He's like, his friend's dead, he killed this dude, he's trying to get his head around it, and then he's like, alright, let's get to work. But of course, Sam and Bucky come in. He's like, yeah, you guys look like shit, you should go see a medic. He's like, Walker, come on, you can explain this, we can get through this and work out. You gotta give us the shield. And the thing is, he's almost at him up until that point. He's like, now I see what this is. And he goes complete no, I'm not fucking doing this. You don't have to do this. And then Bucky's like, yeah, we have to. And I'm like, yeah, Bucky's got a good point with that. And then we start this three-way fight that is down dirty and brutal and really well done. I know I keep saying that they do the action scenes very well, and that, okay, dig into that more. We actually see all these different kind of fighting styles, because Bucky, of course, has the training as a Winter Soldier and an assassin and everything, and he fights differently than Sam with his wings and his jetpack, and Walker, who is trained with the shield. Now, granted, not as extensively as Steve, but him and his new super soldier stuff, and it's just a nasty fight. It's just well executed, well choreographed, because you don't really see any kind of like weird instances where somebody's fake punching or punching a wrong way or doing anything like that. It just flows and it shows what's going on. Walker doesn't give a shit. He says such like things that like really delve into his character. He's like saying to Sam, "We could have been partners," and that's the thing that he doesn't kind of get. Like, you can see that like Walker can views it as like them being antagonistic towards him. Now Bucky pretty much was like antagonistic off the bat because this dude is trying to replace Steve Rogers. That ain't in his wheelhouse. You know what I mean? Sam, he was not openly antagonistic of like, fuck you buddy, eat my ass. He let kind of Walker walk into that point where he's like, you know, I kind of don't want to deal with you. He never took the kind of same kind of stance as Bucky. But him saying that, it's like, dude, yeah, but the thing is, you didn't go through it the ways to get it to be a partner. Sam Wilson gave that to a museum to be like, that's Steve's legacy, let that be there. And then the government gives it to you and makes you Cap. You didn't come talk to him about it. You went out there in full Cap regalia and holding the shield that Sam gave to that museum to honor Steve in his own way. So you're already starting off on a kind of bad footing. And him, like, it's interesting seeing that, like, kind of going throughout. We've seen that go through this whole series, and at that, like, holy shit, as they're, like, hitting on each other. And Bucky kind of gets fucked up a little bit. We see his arm kind of, like, tweaking out because he got, like, really fucked up. Like, Walker was going out heavy, like, pretty hard for a super soldier, and that's the thing. He hasn't been a super soldier for very long, and he does not understand the limits and what his strength can do and how that augments with what's going on with the shield. Steve didn't use that shield until later on, so he had been more accustomed to his super soldier strength to kind of like train to it. Walker trained with it beforehand, and training with that shield as a regular human and training with that shield as a super soldier are completely different kind of experiences. Because one, you're going to be able to like toss that thing at such a thing that it's going to like kill somebody. And he utilized it to kill somebody. Well, Bucky got kind of fucked up, and we see that like Walker is just going kind of ham on Sam, being like, "I am Captain America," and him saying that like that, kind of mirroring Iron Man, kind of saying that, was kind of interesting. Now, I don't think it's like a complete rip or anything like that, but it's interesting that that happens, and then we've also got the end credit scene to see this kind of darker twist of like this person who's like latched onto it, and it's like I am Captain America. It's like Steve wasn't like that, and you can see why Sam is the one that would work the best as Captain America, especially throughout what's going on, because he wouldn't shout at somebody, "I am Captain America." Captain America doesn't shout that they're Captain America. They come in and you're like, oh, that's Captain America, you know? And he's doing that, and he rips and he destroys Sam's wings. He rips them off. It's like, holy fucking shit. Of course, Bucky's kind of like gotten into the effect that he's able to kind of get at him. They're able to get the shield away from him and breaking his arm in the process, and he's still able to use the arm. And he's still going at him, but Bucky's able to kind of restrain him in a position where Sam's able to use his jetpack to blast at him and like take him out and knock him out with the shield, and then they're all three lying on the ground, and it was like, yeah, because that was a down and dirty fight. And then Bucky is the one to get up, picks up the shield and lays it next to Sam, and then goes kind of off. It's like, son of a bitch, as we see Walker just kind of like fucked up on the ground. He's not horribly fucked up, but it's like he ain't doing good. So we find out that like Zemo's in the wind, Carly's in the wind as well, that the GRC is pretty much raiding all the places for her sympathizers because of all the shit that she's done, and they want to kind of get her under control. We get that kind of information as Bucky goes off to pretty much go get Zemo. Torres is like, yeah, Sam's like, so what's the situation? Torres is like, well, Captain America killed a foreign national in public, so the guys higher up are taking point on this, so that means, of course, Sam, Bucky, and Torres are benched on this. They're like, we're gonna take this. It's like, yeah, you should have kind of fucking did that. Sam, of course, has the shield, and they're like, well, Sam's like, well, we need to figure out Carly's next move. She can be anywhere. She's got a giant support network. We gotta figure out what's going on with this. And then Torres is like, well, sometimes there's nothing to do until there's something to do. And I like how Sam says that's something bizarrely wise, and it is. Sometimes you get into a point where there is actually literally nothing for you to do. There's nothing to do until somebody else makes the move or something else happens to get you out there. And granted, you could argue that that is used for filler space in a kind of plot, but sometimes it is nice to kind of have a come down position, and this is definitely that kind of come down episode where we deal with the vast repercussions of what happened last episode, what happened at the beginning here, and kind of move on and kind of see ebb and flow, deal with some plot issues and plot resolutions, and then continue to build towards the finale. Granted, even though with what I said in the beginning, I think that we needed more to kind of get to these points to have better fleshed out things. So, he's talking with that, he's like, damn, what the hell happened to these wings? He's like, Sam doesn't really get into it, but this is an interesting kind of thing, because he's like, damn, I'll have to see what's going on with this. And Sam takes his shield and goes, he's like, hey, you want your wings? He's like, nah, you keep them. And this is important for two reasons. This shows that Sam is moving on. He is accepting the Captain America mantle and is like, okay, I understand my stuff with Falcon and the wings, but I'm kind of done with that. Now, the thing is, he still uses the wings as Captain America in the comics, and will probably use them in here because that is really pivotal to his fighting style. But it's an important part of the growth for him that he has now accepted this because of what he has seen. Now, granted, he still needs more confirmation about this choice, but leaving those wings there is a big step for him. Now, it's also important for a second reason because Joaquin Torres has also been the Falcon in the comic books. Now, granted, in the comic books, it's a lot weirder in that he got spliced with the DNA of a vampire bird and got his powers that way, but Sam leaving the wings there is like, hey, he could be Falcon as well. And I really hope they go that route, because you need more. And I really like how they kind of have mirrored the kind of relationship that Steve and Sam had, like established in the Winter Soldier. Steve, the more established superhero, and Sam being brought into that world. Sam, here, the more established superhero, and Torres being brought into that world. So I like that kind of mirroring. It's not over the head, and it's not like, look at me! This is this thing! It's just like, okay, we'll see how that kind of works. So, he of course goes off to do his thing, and we get to Zemo. And we see that he pretty much gets caught and wrapped up at this memorial for Sokovia. Of course, Bucky comes in. Zemo's just like, well, I didn't have to... I really don't want to kill you. I don't have any grudges against you. Talking about how Carly has become radicalized beyond reason, and that Sam is just as stubborn as Steve Rogers. I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing, especially with what he's trying to do here. Sam and Steve understand that, yes, there will be people that will do horrendous things, but if you stoop to doing their horrendous things as well, you just continue the cycle. And he's just like, well, we're going to stop her our own way. Now, I like that line, but then it kind of takes the bite out of what's going on here. It's like, Bucky puts the gun up against Zemo, fires it, but like nothing comes out, and then he drops the bullets. It's like, well, Sam and Bucky are not going to kill Carly. They're not going to fucking kill Zemo. Then, of course, the Dora Milaje pop up, and I was like, Ayo is like, hey, alright, this is kind of good. Now, make yourself scarce around Wakanda. I don't know why. I mean, granted, they broke him out, but it's not like Bucky was gonna let the fucker free. They essentially needed him for, like, Hannibal Lecter kind of shit, which they fucking did. We got some nice character development for Zemo, but they kind of, like, ran out of use for him, I guess, and they just had him stand here, and then they just have him taken, and they're gonna take him to the Raft. Superhero prison. We saw that in Civil War as well. And then as Ayo is leaving, Bucky's like, hey, can I ask you a favor? It's like, alright, we'll kind of have to see how this goes. We also see the repercussions of Walker's murder. And we see that he comes home, people are pissed at him, and he goes up to the council, and they're like, you're stripped of your Captain America title, you are going to be other than honorably discharged, you will lose your rank, your benefits, and that's it. If you get out of line, you're going to prison. And I'm like, alright. He's, of course, trying to defend himself. He's like, the circumstances and everything. He's like, we saw the circumstances. And he, of course, is pissed. Now, I understand him being pissed, but the thing is, this illustrates that he was a good soldier. He's telling him, I know you have a mandate. I have a mandate. I've done everything you wanted me to. You built me. He was a good soldier. But as we have seen, Steve Rogers is not a good soldier. He was a good man. Steve Rogers has done a lot of stuff that you'd be like, soldiers that do that would be kind of weird. He goes out to save POWs against orders. And comes back, that helps. And then, of course, him doing that leadership role and getting in with, of course, the Howling Commandos, that builds that up. In Winter Soldier, he dismantles a corrupt intelligence organization that pretty much was making super death weapons. He then also, because of that and that distrust of that kind of authority, goes against the Sokovia Accords. But yet, in these instances, he is not trying to do something horrendous and follow horrible orders. He's trying to find that kind of best way. Do they work out perfectly all the time? No. He tries to be the best man that he can be and try and lead. He doesn't shout, I'm Captain America, and try and use that as his authority. He only tries to act as the best that he can, which is what we've seen Sam attempting to do. And we see him dealing with that throughout this episode. But it's interesting to see that juxtaposition as him getting just angry and shouting and yelling, and he's like, nope, if you get out of line, going to prison. Now, in my opinion, the prison part should have been lock and key with it because it's murder. Alright? The dude should have been arrested, and, I mean, they've got prisons at this point that should be able to hold supervillains. The Raft being one of them. Though, granted, Steve Rogers proved that the security on that was pretty much shit to begin with. But, you know, well, he's pissed off at that and walks away, and then we get an interesting cameo of Countess Valentina. Countess Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, I believe. Madam Hydra. Pretty much Nick Fury's opposite with, like, Hydra. So, she's coming in, sits down, talks with him. His wife's like, what the hell is going on with this lady? And it is played by Elaine from Seinfeld. And it's just great because I'm like, shit, this is pretty cool. And the thing is, even though she's Elaine and I know her more from Seinfeld and like all of her different kind of roles, you get the feeling that this lady means business. She's like, you can call me Val, but just do it in your head. Pretty much sitting down is like, you know what? I support you killing that dude. Those guys in there with those ties, they get their money interests and everything. You did the right thing. They don't know what's going on. And, of course, the council also wanted the shield back because they were shouting that at him as he was leaving. And she's like, you know what? Don't worry about the shield. It's a legal gray area anyway. They never owned it. And it's like, they never owned it. That's interesting. Now, I would think about that. It's like, okay, it's either completely Steve's and that him bequeathing it to Sam is his, and him then loaning it to the museum makes it even iffy for them to even give the shield to anyone to begin with. Also, another consideration is that Steve's shield in Endgame was pretty much destroyed a lot. So it could be that there's like Wakandan things that go on with that, because if you're going to get enough vibranium to like repair a shield like that, you're going to have to use Wakandan vibranium, which I don't mind that they would. I don't think they fucking mind because of their relationship with Steve Rogers. But that was a kind of cool little thing. She's like, "Hey, I got the super soldier serum. Yeah, I know about that. It makes you a valuable asset." Second thing that you did two things really right. One is marrying this. Two is marrying this firecracker, this switchmark firecracker. How you doing? And then two is picking up when I call. It's like, okay, weird. And then of course she leaves a card which is blank, and he of course is ruminating on what this is. All right, so let's see here. How do we want to do this? Let's kind of finish his stuff out first, except for the end bit. So he then goes to Lamar's parents to tell them what happened, and of course he does it to make himself feel better and to make them feel better as well. He lies and says that he killed the dude that killed Lamar, because the dude that killed Lamar was Carly. This dude had nothing to do with it. So it kind of assuages him more of his guilt, and he's doubling down and making his own kind of version of everything to justify why he killed that man. And of course the family is like, Lamar loved you, was so proud of you to be Captain America. It's just nice that he'll have peace, and like, because justice was done. I was like, yeah, I understand that your son was killed, all right, but there's a vast difference between justice and what happened. Justice is apprehending the person responsible and meeting the just punishment to make sure it doesn't happen again, and then also like making sure it doesn't happen again. That was just like, no. Now I understand that they're a grieving family and they just want closure for their son and everything. It's really weird. I know that the one was like the mother and the father. I don't know if the other one was a sister or wife. They never really fucking explained that. She was just looking at John weird. And he's like, if you ever need anything, just reach out to me. So he walks by, seeing his whole kind of walker, Captain America's back kind of thing spray painted on a wall. It's like, shit, man. Fucked up. Now let's go to, let's go to Sam's stuff. He decides to visit Isaiah Bradley because he wants to understand more of what happened to him. Because this affects how he is going to wield the mantle of Captain America, wield the shield. And of course, Isaiah doesn't want anything to do with that shield. He's like, screw that. And Sam, of course, is trying to call him out. It's like, hey, don't be that bitter old man. He's like, if you're not bitter, you're blind. And it's interesting to see the two different sides, mainly of Sam's optimism and that of Isaiah's pessimism. Now, the thing is, Isaiah's outlook is completely justified because we get to learning more of what's going on. He, of course, shows that while he was in prison, his wife died, and that she tried to write letters to him, but they told her he was dead. So not only did they imprison him for 30 years, because of that imprisonment, his wife died while he was in prison, and he couldn't say goodbye or say anything to her. So it's fucking horrendous. Also, that they were, of course, experimenting on super soldier serums, using various different kind of things, and like the people in his unit. He, of course, had seen what had happened to the black soldiers that were flying the planes and everything, that they came back and they'd have crosses burned on their front yards and everything, and that his group, they got experimented on, and of course, some of them worked, some of them didn't, and then some of them were sent out on missions, and they were captured in a POW camp, and that he had heard the brass were talking about destroying the evidence, blowing up the POW camp, and he, of course, could not abide by that. Those were his brothers. Kind of similar to Steve, he escaped from where they were holding him and rescued his brothers. But, of course, they got him out, and everyone just kept dying from complications until he was left, and he was in prison. And one nurse took pity on him, was able to get the letters to him, and was helped him escape, and pretty much faked his death. So he understandably has a very negative view of the authority of the government, and because of what they've done to him. And he has a negative view on Steve Rogers because of the fallout of Steve being a super soldier. He brings it up like blonde hair, blue eyes, and has a bone to pick with Steve, and I'm just like, and Sam rightly brings up, Steve didn't do all these things. And Steve, from what we've seen throughout these movie series, would be fucking furious out of what it has happened to someone, and would probably have done some of the stuff that we'd seen. I mean, he went to, he broke with his teammates over what was going on with Bucky in the Civil War. He took down a corrupt intelligence apparatus in Winter Soldier. It's just like, I understand that the consequences of what happened with Steve, of being the first super soldier, led to all these horrendous things because people want power. They want an army of supermen that are unbeatable, and they fucked him over for that. And of course Isaiah is like, hey, he doesn't think that America would accept a black Captain America, and that no self-respecting black man should be Captain America. And it's kind of interesting because it focuses on Sam as he's kind of like hearing Isaiah say these things, as it kind of like cements in him why he needs to pick up this mantle, to kind of prove that good example of what he can be as Captain America and what that means. Because we see these two guys, one cynical and pessimistic of the things because of what he's been through, and Sam being more hopeful and optimistic on it. He understands the challenges needed to be, and that he has to accept these challenges and work with this and do something as Captain America. So it's like, all right, let us see here. Yeah. So then he goes back home to Louisiana, figure out what's going on with his sister and his nephews. Evidently, the buyer that she had lined up would have to put in more work and is deciding not to buy the boat. So she's just trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, she remarks that he came in all sad, puppy dog eyed kind of stuff with what was going on with Isaiah. And he's like, yeah, I'm just trying to think about what's going on. And she, of course, was making lunch for some other kids that don't have lunch. And he's like, how many times have we have our parents kind of like help people out? So let's call in some favors and get some help. And this is a nice kind of like palate cleanser kind of thing, kind of slow her down as we see that Sam working in the community, like Steve would, and talking to people, and they're like, hey, yeah, they get like engines and stuff and parts for the boat, and they're of course like, hey, yeah, all right, thanks guys. He's like calling everybody, they know him. Hey, Sam Wilson, hey, Mr. Falcon, and everything. It's kind of cool to see that stuff going on and how much he is thought of in that community. Well, they're pretty much thinking about how to get that off of the truck, and we see that Bucky pops up, and you're like, there you go. He's like, hey, I'm just leaving this here with you. As long as you sign, I'll get out of your hair. And it's essentially like a Wakandan loot box. I'm like, Marvel needs to sell that shit, because the box looks pretty cool. I fucking had that. And that, of course, is dealing with the favor that Bucky was calling in. Now, of course, we see that things are going on with the boat, so Bucky decides to go in and help. We get a little flirting with Sarah and Bucky, which is kind of funny because Sam's like, shit! And it's like another thing for me to connect with Sam. It's just like that when you got a brother-sister kind of thing going on, like, what the fuck's going on? Your kind of work friend kind of getting with your sister's like, all right. And we see him having their little montage fixing the boat and everything. Bucky doing some things. He's like, thanks. He's like, all right, well, I'll help you out a little bit, so I'm going to go stay in a hotel and then catch my flight. He's like, you going to do me like that? I was like, no, you stay on the couch. Stay with us. We're good. But if you flirt with my sister, I'm going to have Carlos cut you up and feed you to the fish, this kind of stuff. I don't mind that trope. You always have that. So, of course, Bucky then sleeps on the couch, and then he wakes up and he sees Sam's nephews playing with the shield, being like, they are. It's really kind of cool to see that they're inspired by Cap as well. They're like, oh crap, put it down. And it's like, yes, they'd be just as inspired by it as others, because they're inspired by Cap, and they'd be inspired by Sam, and because they're the same kind of person. They're those good men that are trying to help people. And Bucky smiling at that is really cool because he understands that Steve's legacy still means something to people and what that means. So we then see that Sam pretty much sets up this course that they're pretty much getting used to the shield and everything. Bucky, of course, apologizing to him. Him and Steve obviously didn't take into consideration what it would mean handing the shield to a black man, and that they didn't take that into consideration, and they were apologizing. He was apologizing to Sam for that. He's like, yeah, there we go. And that's kind of like all he wanted. Is like, yeah, it's a big thing to do. And he, of course, then gets into some tough love with Bucky. He's like, yeah, I'm still having those nightmares, and he's afraid of the Winter Soldier still being in there. And that when Sam put the shield in the museum, he's just like, it's part of his family. It's one of the things that he's used to kind of anchor himself. Because what's interesting with Bucky is that Sam does bring out that, like, if you're in that hell, you got to get yourself out. You got to do it inside. It doesn't matter what Steve thinks, doesn't matter what I think, which, yeah, Steve would be like, oh, I'm glad that you agree with what I'm thinking, but Steve would never put that, like, on someone. You choose it. And that individuality and individual freedom is an important thing. And Sam being like, yeah, you gotta do that yourself, because Bucky had to take those steps to define himself from the outside, to pull himself out of the Winter Soldier programming with Steve and the shield and everything like that. But now he has to have that own kind of inner control now. That with his book, which Zemo scratched his name out of, bears no grudges and everything, he's gotta, because what he's been doing is not making amends but avenging for the wrongs of the Winter Soldier. What he's got to do is be of service to someone, make them feel better for what happened. He's like, well, I can at least do that with, I got 12 that I can do that for. And he's like, well, just do one, start there. And Sam gives him really good advice as they're like getting used to the shield and everything like that. It's like, alright, cool. So Bucky then decides to leave. He's like, yeah, I'll be going up to New York and everything. It's like, alright, cool. We're like, people that just work together. And talking about partners and everything as they then part their separate ways. We then get Sam doing a nice kind of training montage, getting used to the shield and everything, doing various workouts and like kind of changing up his style to deal with the shield. And of course, we get the failing at first a little bit, but then we see his like nephews getting into it and everything going on, him running around, kind of thinking about everything. I was like, all right, I wasn't expecting a training montage, but it was nice. Nice little way of kind of like showing him getting used to the shield and doing what he needs to do. And he's like, yeah, alright, cool. We're alright with this. We see that Sharon also is talking with someone getting out of an Algerian prison, which we would assume is Batroc, because they're getting them set up with what's going on with Carly and the Flag Smashers. And it's like, ooh, what is Sharon doing with that? So we'll see how that kind of works out. And how she kind of fits in it. That's my thing. It's like, okay, we need a little bit more on that. But it was evidently behind his stuff in the beginning, so I was like, what's going on here? So Sam kind of gets through that. Carly, of course, sets up with Batroc as they are going against the GRC for their vote. And, of course, he just wants to kill the Falcon as he's got all this gear and stuff. And that, she's like, yeah, we're criminals. And she's just like, yeah, let's go stop this shit and do our criminal kind of shit. It's like, god damn, you set them up as freedom fighters in, like, the beginning. Then you kind of ramp them up to, like, we're going to kill people now. And then now, like, full-on criminal shit that kind of works against their whole kind of thing. And that can work, but you need a little bit more time to kind of set that up. Because Walker has been devoted more time to his turn, and that's why that's working better than here. With Sharon in the background and Batroc, nice to have him brought in as like a criminal element. It's just like, the fuck am I doing here? I'm not into your causes and shit. But we see that they're in New York. She starts setting up Flag Smasher kind of stuff to get that going on. And we see the GRC Council pretty much getting ready to vote to see if they are going to use military effort to take all the refugees and put them back into their countries of origin, whether or not that they have the resources to do that, because some people bringing that up, and the senator that's doing that is the same one that set up John Walker. And of course they have some people from the Flag Smashers talking in the one world, one people thing as everything starts going haywire. Torres, of course, is able to call Sam and is like, hey, listen, We're looking at some certain stuff we were able to figure out, like whenever the Flag Smashers hit, this kind of activity would start popping up, and we just saw a kind of thing in New York. Sam, of course, is able to see on the TV that it's related to the vote. He's like, hey, Taurus, good job. I got it from here. Now, that works in our favor because Bucky is mainly based in New York, so it wouldn't take that time to have Sam get up there and team up with him to take on what's going on there. So he opens the Wakandan loot box, and that's kind of where that ends off. Thinking new suit, definitely would be able to use some vibranium wings, so that way somebody wouldn't be able to like rip that off as easily. So we'll kind of have to see that. It's like, damn it, I want to see that suit, see what's going on with that. Then we get a mid-credit scene, which is the first one that we've gotten at this point. We see that Walker is making his own shield. Kind of reminiscent. This is the other kind of Iron Man kind of callback, where Iron Man kind of like making his suit in the cave. This kind of echoes that as Walker is making his own Captain America shield while welding on his metals as well, which is just like, okay, that'll be interesting. And the thing is, it's not like vibranium shield, so it's gonna be kind of like definitely weaker, kind of weirder because of how it looks homemade, and we'll kind of have to see how that goes on. He's probably, he could potentially go full on crack ass mode and just be like, rah, wah, and busting. It's like, I almost want to see it like from like two perspectives. I want to see it in his head where he's thinking, I'm Captain America, and then you see it as outside as Sam and Bucky's like, that dude's fucking lost it. He fucking made a shield out of nowhere and is like going rah and screaming and shit. It's like, this is going to be even worse than when we had to take the fucking shield from his ass. Ugh. It's setting up for like one hell of a fucking crazy clash of, we got the Flag Smashers with Batroc in New York. John's probably going to pop up because he's like, I'm going to deal with that Carly because this is my chance to kill her and actually prove my story is correct. Hee. And Sam and Bucky are going to be like, oh, this is screwy. Ugh. Though it would be kind of cool if Taurus popped up as Falcon if he was able to fix the wings fast enough. Now, granted, timeline-wise, I know that would be a fucking giant ask, but it would be kind of cool to see that happen. So, I enjoyed what was going on with this. Though the scene of, like, Bucky and Zemo with the whole bullets and the gun thing was kind of, like, even proved fruitless because of the line before. It's like, if you're not going to kill Carly, you're not going to kill this fucking douche. And I kind of... It was serviceable for his exit for what was going on. At least it wasn't just, like, left off. But I'm like, they needed to do more with Zemo. I liked what they were doing with his character, and then I just wanted a kind of better end. Now, granted, this could be looked at as a more kind of stopgap as he's at the raft and they do shit. But other than that, I liked Sam getting into the role of Captain America and kind of, like, gearing up for that final reveal as we see him fully take on the mantle in this last episode, and see Bucky kind of come into terms and them really kind of getting their friendship more on an interesting track and actually dealing with shit going on with the sister, since we haven't really had much except her getting threatened by Carly throughout the season. So I liked all this kind of deep stuff that was being talked about, even though there were some crazy wonky ass issues, and we'll have to see how this kind of ends. I do think that one of the biggest kind of criticisms is this needed more episodes, which is kind of strange because when I was doing WandaVision, I'm like, like if those 3 episodes, like, they could have, it's really weird. This one definitely needed more episodes. Even though I like the pacing of how the episodes work out of the flow of, like, plot and everything, there's some things that really need to delve deeper to do justice for what's going on. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.